So, have you ever actually stopped and wondered just how much of your identity was hardwired into you before you were even born? Well, today we are going way beyond basic biology to look at exactly how our genes shape human development. We're going to explore the incredibly complex reality of how the genetic instructions we inherit are constantly being activated, suppressed, or heavily modified by the environments we navigate every single day. You see, this isn't just some abstract philosophical question about who we are. It's a deep biological look into how we actually become that person, both on a physiological and a psychological level. Okay, let's dive right in with Section 1, the Great Human Debate. So, are we born to become who we are, or are we shaped by our experiences? For centuries, philosophers and early scientists argued endlessly over this seemingly simple concept. Historically, it was always framed as this rigid either-or dichotomy, nature versus nurture. But as you'll see, the modern scientific answer is far more sophisticated than just throwing our hands up and saying, well, I guess it's both. It's really all about how these two powerful forces constantly collide and collaborate. Your destiny isn't exclusively written in your DNA, but it's also not entirely dictated by the random events of your life either. Instead, human development is this ongoing, highly dynamic result of our genetic code actively engaging with the world around us. Which brings us to Section 2, nature, which is our genetic inheritance. So what do we mean when we say nature? Well, nature refers to the highly specific characteristics that we inherit through our genetic sequencing. Think of this as establishing our biological baseline. But this goes way beyond basic physical traits like how tall you are or the color of your eyes. Our genetics deeply, deeply influence the very architecture of our brains. Specific genetic markers can actually predispose us to complex behavioral traits. We're talking about things like our baseline for risk-taking, our natural stress response, or even our innate temperamental leanings. For instance, someone might inherit a genetic variant that makes their neural pathways highly reactive to dopamine. That basically predisposes them to novelty-seeking behaviors right from the time they're a toddler. That is the biological foundation right there. It's a complex code that sets the initial parameters of our potential. Moving right along to Section 3, nurture and the world we experience. Okay, so if our genetic code is the biological blueprint, nurture is the actual construction process. It encompasses absolutely everything we experience after birth. It's the continuous, lifelong impact of the environment acting directly upon that genetic baseline we just talked about. Nurture dictates which parts of your genetic blueprint are prioritized, which ones are ignored, and which ones get heavily modified over time. Because think about it, a genetic predisposition toward really high intelligence or maybe incredible athletic prowess, it doesn't just spontaneously manifest in a vacuum, right? It strictly requires the catalyst of the outside world to actually take shape and express itself in reality. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how massive the scope of nurture really is. It isn't just one monolithic concept. It's an incredibly complex, interwoven web of external factors. We're talking about the broader culture you were raised in, the formal education you receive, and the really nuanced dynamics of your friendships, your family life, and even your daily physical environment. Every single interaction, every stressor, and every supportive conversation literally acts upon your biology. Take a stressful early childhood environment, for instance. That can fundamentally alter how a brain develops and processes cortisol, which effectively changes a person's baseline stress response for decades to come. These environmental inputs are just constantly communicating with your genes. When we view these two forces conceptually alongside one another, we see this absolutely fascinating synthesis. On one side, your biological inheritance sets the boundaries, and on the other side, the environment pushes against them. In fact, modern research points heavily to something called gene-environment correlation. Essentially, this means our genes actually prompt us to seek out specific environments. So a child with a genetic predisposition for extroversion will actively seek out highly social environments. And what happens? That environment then reinforces and deeply develops their social skills. So the biology drives the environmental choice, and the environment then reinforces the biology in this continuous, lifelong feedback loop. Let's look a little closer at that in Section 4, how nature and nurture interact. And this brilliantly illustrates how a genetic predisposition actually plays out in the real world, particularly through the lens of epigenetics, which is just the study of how our behaviors and environments can cause physical changes that affect the way our genes work. Look at this. A person born with a genetic vulnerability or disadvantage can often completely completely overcome those challenges if they're embedded in a highly supportive, resource-rich environment. The environment can literally prevent certain disadvantaged genes from even expressing themselves. But conversely, incredible natural talent can remain completely dormant if a person is placed in an environment totally devoid of support or opportunity. In a very real way, the environment acts as a vital molecular switch, turning your genetic potentials on or off. Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, Shaping Your Own Journey. Because we now understand the sheer depth of how our environment interacts with our DNA, we realize something incredibly empowering. We have a tremendous amount of agency here. We are not just passive passengers on some pre-programmed genetic ride. By intentionally improving our surroundings, investing in targeted learning, and building structured positive daily habits, we can actively trigger positive genetic potentials. Providing rich, opportunity-dense environments for ourselves and for the next generation is essentially optimizing the exact conditions for genetic flourishing. We can quite literally use nurture to heavily compensate for biological disadvantages and to maximize our innate strengths. The ultimate takeaway from modern developmental science is right here on this slide. Growth is always possible. We now understand that the brain maintains neuroplasticity, which is that incredible ability to form and reorganize synaptic connections throughout our entire lives. Because of this phenomenal adaptation and the epigenetic impact of our daily habits, your genetic code simply establishes your starting point. It categorically does not dictate your finish line. The continuous, intentional application of a positive environment keeps the door to developmental growth wide open, at literally any age. So, to wrap this all up, yes, you are undeniably a product of your biology, for sure, but you are also the primary architect of how that biology is expressed into the world. The genes you were handed on day one provide the raw materials, but the choices you make shape the final structure. Knowing that your daily habits, the people you surround yourself with, and the information you consume literally interact with your genetic code on a cellular level, what kind of environment will you choose to build for yourself today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.